The Sands Hotel, Las Vegas, 1963. 3 in the morning, and the real meeting was just beginning. In the back office behind the Copa Room, 5 men controlled more of America than most senators ever would. Sam Giancana from Chicago, Johnny Rosselli from Los Angeles, 2 casino executives whose names never appeared on any paperwork. And at the head of the table, Santo Trafficante Jr., who ran Florida like a private kingdom. Frank Sinatra sat between them, leaning forward, desperate to please. His laugh was too loud, his gestures too eager. The most famous entertainer in America looked like a nervous waiter hoping for a good tip. These men owned Las Vegas. They owned the casinos, the unions, the distribution networks. And through 1,000 invisible strings, they owned the performers who filled their showrooms. Every headliner in Vegas understood the arrangement. You sang where they told you. You appeared at their charity events. You lost at their tables when they needed you to. You never, ever said no. The door opened. Dean Martin walked in, already halfway through a drink. "Dino," Sam Giancana said, not standing. "We've been waiting." Dean found a chair, sat down backwards, straddling it like he was watching a poker game that didn't involve his money. For what? The temperature in the room shifted. Nobody spoke to Sam Giancana like that. Nobody spoke to any of them like that. Sinatra's foot tapped under the table, a nervous tick his psychiatrist would later document. He knew what these men could do, what they had done. To singers who forgot their place, to actors who talked to the wrong journalists, to comedians who made the wrong jokes. "We need you in Miami," Giancana said. The way he said need made it clear this wasn't a request. 3 weeks, the Fontainebleau. You'll headline. "Can't do it," Dean said, sipping his drink. The silence lasted 7 seconds. Sinatra counted them. "What do you mean, can't?" Trafficante's voice was soft. Soft was worse than loud with men like this. Dean smiled, that easy, sleepy smile that made him millions. "I mean I'm playing golf that week." In 50 years of running Las Vegas, nobody had ever told these men they were going golfing instead. Frank Sinatra ran the world of entertainment, but he was terrified of the men in this room. Dean Martin just ordered another drink. This isn't a story about singing. This isn't about the Rat Pack, the movies, or the 17 gold albums. This is about the only man in Hollywood who could look at absolute power and say, "No thanks, I've got other plans." While Frank Sinatra spent his life chasing respect from dangerous men, while Sammy Davis Jr. navigated survival in impossible rooms, Dean Martin did something nobody thought possible. He made untouchable men realize they couldn't touch him. Welcome to the story nobody told while Dean was alive. The story of how a barber's son from Ohio became the only man the mob couldn't buy, couldn't threaten, and couldn't understand. To understand Dean's power, you need to understand the machine he refused to join. Las Vegas in the 1960s wasn't run by corporations. It was run by 5 families who treated the desert like their private ATM. The Chicago outfit controlled the Stardust. The Genovese family had pieces of the Tropicana. Cleveland ran the Desert Inn. Every casino needed entertainers. Every entertainer needed casinos. It was a closed loop of dependency, and the mob held all the switches. Here's how the system worked. You got discovered. You got a manager, usually connected. You got bookings, always connected. You signed contracts you didn't read with men you didn't know. By the time you were famous, you owed favors to people who collected in blood. Frank Sinatra? He didn't just work for these men, he courted them. FBI wiretaps from 1962 captured Sinatra calling Sam Giancana "Sir" 17 times in one conversation. The most powerful entertainer in America was saying "sir" to a man who'd ordered 30 murders before breakfast. Why? Because Frank needed their approval like oxygen. He'd grown up wanting to be respected, to be feared, to matter.
The mob made him feel like a tough guy. They gave him the validation his father never did. Sammy Davis Jr.? He had even less choice. As a black performer in white-owned venues, saying no meant more than losing bookings. It meant violence. It meant being found in the desert. Sammy survived by being indispensable and submissive simultaneously. Talented enough to need, submissive enough to control. But Dean Martin? Dean had discovered something that made him immune to the machine. He'd discovered the most dangerous thing a man in that world could possess. He genuinely didn't give a damn.
The Miami meeting wasn't the first time Dean said no. It was just the most dangerous. In 1961, Joseph Bonanno, Joe Bananas to the FBI, wanted Dean to perform at his son's wedding. Every major entertainer had said yes immediately. Dean said he was washing his car that weekend. In 1962, Carlos Marcello, who ran New Orleans like a feudal lord, demanded Dean extend his engagement at the Town and Country Club. Dean left mid-contract to play golf in Palm Springs. Each time, the same pattern. The request, the assumption of compliance, Dean's casual refusal, the stunned silence. Here's what the mob never understood about Dean Martin. His indifference wasn't an act. It wasn't bravado. It was real. Dean had grown up in Steubenville, Ohio during the Depression. His father cut hair for steel workers who got laid off every winter. Dean had been poor, really poor, eating lard sandwiches poor. He'd worked as a prize fighter, a steel worker, a croupier in illegal gambling joints. By the time Hollywood and Vegas came calling, Dean had already survived actual hardship. These men in expensive suits threatening his career? They were threatening to take away things Dean never expected to have. "You know what I learned dealing cards?" Dean once told his conductor, Ken Lane. "The house always wins, so why care about the game?" This philosophy made him untouchable in a way violence never could. When Sam Giancana threatened to end his career over the Miami refusal, Dean's response became legend among Vegas insiders. "Sam, I've been broke before. I was happier." What do you do with a man who isn't afraid of losing everything? How do you control someone who'd rather walk away than comply? How do you threaten someone who treats million-dollar contracts like dinner invitations? Nice if you're hungry, no loss if you're not. The mob had killed for less. They'd destroyed careers for infinitely less. But killing Dean Martin would have been like declaring war on American entertainment. He wasn't just a singer, he was an institution. Mothers loved him. Kids watched his TV show. Presidents invited him to dinner. More importantly, Dean never antagonized them. He just declined, politely, with that sleepy smile that suggested he might not even remember the conversation tomorrow. Frank Sinatra watched all of this in terror and awe. He'd spent decades cultivating these relationships, proving his loyalty, demonstrating his value. And here was Dean, treating the most dangerous men in America like insurance salesmen he wasn't interested in buying from. The cost of Dean's independence wasn't paid in blood, it was paid in solitude. Frank Sinatra never forgave him for the Miami incident, not because Dean had refused the mob, but because Dean had done it so easily. It exposed Frank's desperation, his need, his fundamental weakness. Their friendship, once the cornerstone of the Rat Pack, dissolved into polite distance. Frank needed the mob's approval. Dean needed 18 holes at Riviera Country Club before lunch. By 1966, Dean had walked away from everything that required compromise. He quit the Rat Pack mid-tour. He stopped taking Vegas bookings that came with strings. He worked when he wanted, where he wanted, for exactly as long as he wanted. The powerful men who'd once tried to control him could only watch. Johnny Rosselli, before his body was found in an oil drum in Miami Bay, once said about Dean, "You can't break a man who's already decided he's got nothing to lose." Dean's television show became his fortress, shot on his schedule, his way, often with Dean barely rehearsing. He'd show up, sing a few songs, make a few jokes about drinking, and collect a check that freed him from ever needing anyone's permission again. While Frank Sinatra spent his later years desperate for recognition, the Congressional Gold Medal,
The Kennedy connections, the mob's respect. Dean spent his playing golf. Alone. Frank collects people, Dean once told his daughter, Deanna. I collect silence. Dean Martin died on Christmas Day, 1995. His funeral was small, quiet, exactly how he would have wanted it. Frank Sinatra, who died 3 years later, had a funeral attended by power brokers, politicians, and everyone who'd ever wanted to matter in Hollywood. The same men who controlled him in life celebrated him in death. But here's the thing about Dean Martin's legacy. He proved something everyone thought impossible. That you could succeed in a corrupt system without becoming corrupt. That you could work with powerful men without being owned by them. That the greatest power isn't the ability to control others, it's the ability to not need anyone's control. The mob never figured out how to handle Dean Martin because Dean had figured out something they never understood. True power isn't about making others afraid, it's about having nothing to fear yourself. In a world where everyone was performing, Dean Martin's greatest act was refusing to act at all. He didn't beat the system, he didn't fight the power, he just decided it didn't apply to him. And somehow, incredibly, impossibly, everyone else decided he was right. Because when a man genuinely doesn't care if you destroy him, you've already lost. And Dean Martin? He never cared about winning. He just wanted to play golf.